Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Autodesk University in the Epic Games booth. My name is Chris Murray, and in the next 20 minutes, we're going to be taking a look at 20 Unreal Engine tips. This is a great way to jumpstart your work in Unreal Engine if you're new, or if you've been using it for a while, maybe you'll find something new that you haven't seen before. Again, I said my name is Chris Murray, and I manage our online learning product at Epic Games. If you haven't been there, be sure to check it out. Unrealengine.com/online learning is where we have over 40 courses, totally free. Lynda.com style learning, small, digestible nuggets, nice long courses. Some are maybe only 20 minutes, but this is where you can get a really good example of learning material that will really accelerate your onboarding with Unreal Engine. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. Now, the first tip is we're going to start by looking at tips for the editor. So I have a lot of things that I have to accomplish in the next few minutes, so we're going to go kind of quick because I only have 20 minutes. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is using high precision normals for accurate reflections in the engine. So what does high precision normal mean? So the image on the left is the default setting in Unreal Engine, where you have G-buffer precision normal is set to off, and the left is on, and you can see some of the vertical and horizontal lines are a lot smoother. And so the way you turn that on is we're going to go ahead and go to Project Settings, and we're going to look under the Rendering section, and we'll scroll all the way down, look for Rendering, and then about 2/3 of the way down in the menu there is a section called G-buffer Format. So you come in here and you set that to high precision normals, and this allows the G-buffer to use a higher precision normal encoding. And basically it's going to give you 16 bits per channel, dividing the normal vector into 3 different channels. So again, a great way to do that. A nice thing about this is you can see the effects right away. Sometimes when you change a setting in Unreal Engine, you might have to restart your project. You don't have to do that at all. So you can see the benefit of that right away. The next tip is that you might want to consider color coding your folders. I know that I'd been using Unreal Engine a long time before I actually discovered this one. This is great. So in the content browser on the bottom part of the screen, you have a lot of information there. Maybe you might be organizing it into actual directories, but if you right-click on the folder, you can actually set the color for each individual folder. And this is great because, one, it just looks great, and you can begin to quickly associate your content to a color without actually having to read the folder label. And so what I do is I usually save a preset project that I use with like a folder system set up frequently, and I'll migrate my content into there to have it on hand beforehand. The next tip is to use the color calibrator asset for proper color control. And so a lot of people might not be aware of this, but you have a scene. We actually have the ability to have a little asset for you. So what we'll do is we'll turn on engine content, and you go into the engine content folder, and I'm just going to go ahead and search on the word color here, and you can see it takes us to the color calibrator folder where there's an asset. And you can just drag it right into the scene. And the cool thing about this is it has a built-in Macbeth chart. It has a 50% gray ball built in there for you. It has a 50% gray clear coat sphere, a full chrome sphere. So again, this is a great asset. I put these in all my scenes to just kind of double check my color, double check the intensity of the lighting, things like that. So that's a great one. The next thing is that you might want to consider using collections to organize like things. Now, in the content browser or in the World Outliner, you can see that we have a lot of things named wheel in the scene, but you might actually want to organize them in the content browser for things that are not all in the scene. So I've gone ahead and I've created a collection, and we're also going to use some favorites. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this directory with all of my geometry a favorite, so that I can always navigate quickly to that folder without having to do a lot of directory diving. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the objects that are the wheel components. Now, these may or may not be in the scene, so they might not appear in the World Outliner. So what I can do is I can select them all and turn them into a collection. And so now, whether I'm interested in seeing all of the geometry from this vehicle or maybe just the wheels, I can quickly switch back and forth between how I've organized the geometry in the scene. The next tip is if you are always launching Unreal Engine and then having to go in and load a specific level for your project, consider using the level that you always load. So super easy to do. we're going to go ahead and say, this is the level that we always want to load. So we go into project settings, and we'll go ahead and we're looking for maps and modes. So we'll scroll down a little bit to there. Look under description. Actually, let's go ahead and type in maps. I like the search engines in Unreal Engine, so we'll type in maps. And here is where you can actually choose the specific map that you want to have launch every time you launch the project. It's just a little time saver. And now when we have that set up, that project will launch every time, or that level will launch every time we launch the project. One of my personal favorites, being a photographer, is visualizing depth of field with the Debug focus plane. So here we have some really nice depth of field going on with our cinematic camera in Unreal Engine. As I move the camera in and out, you can see that our depth of field is moving. But how do I actually want to control the specific focal position of where the camera is focusing? So under under focus settings on the camera, I can activate the Debug focus plane, and this allows me to basically pick visually where I want the focus of the lens to actually be, and it creates this little purple plane that I can visualize and see exactly where the focus is going to be. Yes, my next tip is render passes. Believe it or not, a lot of people are still using offline workflows and they want to take advantage of a compositing pipeline. We can still do render passes even though we're a real-time engine, and it's real simple to do. One thing you have to have in your scene is a level sequence. So I've created a camera move with sequencer, and we're actually looking through that camera move right here. So you can see I'm scrubbing the timeline. All we want to do is click on output, and instead of the sequence itself, we'll go ahead and choose custom render passes. And now I can add things like base color or show depth, scene color. I can have any number of passes that I want. Just like a rendering dialog, I choose a specific directory, and then I say capture the movie, set the output size, and then it just begins rendering the video. And you can see what it's doing is just writing out all those frames. And if I bring the directory back in, just like any other render pass, it's totally creating all of those render passes, and then I can use them any place else I want. So again, super simple to do, and yes, you can still take advantage of that. I'm showing a lot of tips and tricks here, but a lot of these things I'm pulling from our online learning portal, which can be found at unrealengine.com, online learning. We've spent a lot of time investing in learning paths and specific vertical market or industry-specific learning material for design visualization, and you can find those all there. They're done with your types of content, with your types of, your industry voice. They're projects and workflows that you're going to understand when you take the courses. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. Now, let's move on to a couple tips for Datasmith. We added the Datasmith modifier in, and this is a great way to control your exports. So simply put, in 3ds Max, there is actually a Datasmith modifier that you can apply to any piece of geometry in your scene. And this is great because it does a couple of things. One, it allows you to create light maps into a specific channel, or use your existing light maps and put those into a specific channel so you don't have to recreate them. And if you spend a lot of time unwrapping your geometry, you're going to be able to realize that work in Unreal Engine. You can also take advantage of a custom collision mesh. We can generate custom collision meshes in the engine, but a lot of times maybe you have a specific collision mesh that you want to use. You can now use that. And finally, you can export certain geometries as bounding boxes, which is good for like background elements. So maybe you don't want to export your entire scene with all of that data. You just throw the Datasmith modifier on those objects that you want to export as bounding boxes, and you can be real selective in everything that you export. This next one is really great. If you've been following what we've been doing in Unreal, you know that we've recently released the preview versions of the next version. Next version of the engine is 4.24, and so we're introducing a thing called a data prep tool. And this is like a pre-flight area where you can actually import, in this case, a Revit asset. And I want to do some work on it, some manipulations before we actually bring it into Unreal Engine. And this is a node-based environment where we can create recipes like object selections or doing material swaps. In this case, I want to strip out all of this placeholder furniture before it gets put in the scene. So what I do is I just drag a couple nodes, and so we're going to go ahead and filter an object by a file or by an object name, and then we're going to delete that object. And then I want to delete everything that has furniture. Now this is not yet, this geometry is not yet in the scene. This is like a staging area. So then when I go ahead and hook them together and execute it, you can see that the furniture is stripped out. And then all I would have to do is commit that change, and it would put it into Unreal Engine. There's a lot of other nodes that we can pipe together. So for example, if we want to control tessellation, if we want to generate unwrapped UVs, the cool thing about these nodes is that they're savable recipes. You can call on them later. And depending on how your scene is structured, if you're using common names or product part numbers or things like that, you can extract metadata, and you can perform operations on the data before it even has, before it's even in the engine yet. So that's one of the really nice things about that. Another possible workflow is using Datasmith, doing multiple exports and imports. So for example, a lot of people might export an entire scene in Datasmith and then bring it in and work with it that way. Another way to work is that you could actually do multiple Datasmith exports and imports, and maybe have your lighting in a couple of different workflows, or maybe certain parts of your architecture in some, maybe have a decor level, and then combine them all. You can have multiple Datasmith imports into Unreal Engine. This combined with a data prep tool, it's really just got a whole lot more flexible in the types of things that you can do with Datasmith. If you're trying to adapt these workflows, again, I would encourage you to visit our online learning portal. We have, like I mentioned, guided learning paths. The courses are done from industry experts in your voice. One of the cool things that we now have is the ability to do quizzes and get badges. So as you progress, you're going to be able to record and track your progress. So that's really cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple tips for light mass. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at visualizing light map density to find trouble spots and some other view modes within the menu. So the optimization view modes are really, really helpful. If you click on the viewport label that says lit and you drag down, you'll see an option setting there called optimization view modes. And this is where you can see the density of your light maps. So it color codes it, and it gives you a kind of a temperature or a heat map of what is, what's a good texel density for your light maps. So anything that's blue is a little bit on the light side, might be a little pixelated. You're kind of shooting for green in there. Anything that's red, you probably want to revisit that piece of geometry and tweak the UV layouts for that light map. So again, this is a good way to see how your scene is being processed, and it gives you the ability to diagnose errors or unexpected results. Now, even though we have new ray tracing features in Unreal Engine, you might want to consider some of your workflows. You may actually still be doing some light baking, and if that's the case, you're going to make sure that you have light mass importance volume. So a light mass importance volume is essentially like a gizmo. It's a non-rendering box, and so what I'll do is I'll go ahead to my volumes, and looking for a light mass importance volume, and so I bring this in, and what I do is this is essentially a limiter for all the photons that are going to be shot out when I do my light bake. And what this allows me to do is basically not waste cycles. It's going to constrain all the photons within this box. It can be either the entire geometry or just a small single area. But the point is that you don't waste computational time in the light baking process. And so you want to enclose your geometry and then bake your lights with that. So don't forget to include that. Now, this tip is kind of more than one tip. There's several things in here. This is a little bit of a process. I'm watching my time. I want to make sure that we're respecting the time here. So preparing a scene for good lighting. Now, I underline the word preparing because this isn't how to do good lighting. This is essentially neutralizing your scene so that you can start to make some good decisions about lighting. And that's all done with the magical post-process volume. Now, out of the box, lots of things look great in Unreal Engine, and you're like, wow, how does that, I have nice bloom, and the shadows look great, and all the colors look great. How do you control all that stuff? Well, actually, since it's already on by default, you have to add a post-process volume into your scene to kind of wrest control of all of that back from the engine. So The post-process volume, just like the light mass importance volume, is just a simple non-rendering actor that goes into your scene. You can have more than one, which is really kind of cool. So you can actually do different light setups per room. But in the case of just stripping out all of the cool effects from Unreal Engine, we're only going to use one. We want that manual control back. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to deactivate auto exposure. We're going to deactivate screen space ambient occlusion and screen space reflection. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into project settings, and you can either turn on or off auto exposure at the project level, or you can do it on the post-process level. I do it here. I go in and I uncheck auto exposure. This will prevent the automatic iris from changing. Then in the post-process volume, I'll go in and this is a little bit of backward logic, but it makes sense once you understand it. I'm actually going to turn on the checkbox for ambient occlusion and then set it to 0. This is how I'm taking control back, right? Ambient occlusion is on by default. So what I want to do is I want to control that intensity. So I'm going to click the checkbox and set it to 0. Same thing for screen space reflections. Turn on the checkbox and set it to 0. I'm going to keep the default tone mapper. I'm not going to do anything with that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all my bloom and my vignette effects. So same approach, activate the method and then set the intensity to 0. And same thing with vignette, is activate the intensity and set it to 0. Then the last thing you can do is add a chrome sphere or a gray sphere. You can either create this from scratch, using a gray sphere, just set up a simple gray material with a 0.18 luminance value, or you can just use the color calibrator asset that I showed you earlier. That's actually all set up for this. And then depending on whether I'm indoors or out, you can use a directional light set at pi. Pi is kind of a nice known number because it's 3.14. It gives you a good baseline. If you start working with that as you go, you can take advantage of that. Of course, we have photometric lights in Unreal Engine. So if you're using an IES file or something like that, you'll be going with that. So again, you can do that. So if you're not sure what a post-process volume is, we actually have a couple of courses on our online portal that tell you this. I would strongly recommend you check out this Advanced Techniques for Architect course, and you can find that at unrealengine.com/online learning. So we're almost out of time. I want to finish up with just a couple. We're going to take a look at the new HDR Backdrop. Again, this is in the preview of 424. So I have a real simple scene here. We're going to go ahead and activate the HDR Backdrop plugin. Now that did require a restart there. So you saw the desktop real quick, and it shows up as a light. So all you have to do is just drag the HDRI backdrop in. I'm going to go ahead and delete the directional light so that we can just take a look at what the HDR is contributing to the scene. You see if I rotate the sphere, it affects the reflections in there. We'll go ahead and change the backdrop, which is really nice. You can either use the backdrops that we've provided, or you can actually create your own and add them in there. I'll go ahead and move up in here, and we'll just swap out some of the backgrounds so that you can get a good indication of what the HDR backdrop contributes to the scene and how it affects the reflections on the car. So again, image-based lighting is a great a realistic addition to your scenes. We can also use the new sun positioner for getting accurate daylight systems. Now, this is a real simple scene. This is also a plugin. I'll go ahead and activate this. We'll turn on the sun positioner, do a quick restart of the project. It's now enabled. Now it also shows up as a light. So I'll open up this file again, and we'll go over to, this was the default setup. So I actually have a directional light and I have a physical light in there. We'll go ahead and drag the sunlight in, and you can see they're both there. So we can delete what we had previously. And now I have a daylight system in there. I'll go ahead and select the sun sky object, and we can now adjust its latitude, longitude, time zones, time of day, adjust the solar time. So again, real great, easy way to get a sun sky in there. Now, if you have been to our learning portal, you know that we have a lot of badges. So these are the types of badges that you can get on our learning portal, and you can actually collect a lot of badges, and then they begin to show up on your profile, and then you can share these with your friends. You can tell people, what course you took. You can share it on LinkedIn or Twitter. People love these things, so be sure to stop by the online portal and track your progress, show us achievements, and share it on social. All right, so I only have a couple minutes left. We're really jamming here. Last couple tips are working with meshes. This one is LOD Presets and LOD Coloration. When you're working with LODs, you want to not always have the same level of detail. So what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly go over to the static mesh editor. We'll open that up, and we'll use some of our automatic, let's grab that, go in there real quick, and use some automatic LOD generation. One of the nice things about LODs is that you can use some of the presets to actually create the LODs that you need. So in the static mesh editor, I'm going to choose LOD group high detail, and this will automatically generate all of the LODs that I need. And then once I use the visualizer, I'll be able to zoom in and out and actually see where they're happening. We'll give that a chance to go there. And then when I go to lit mode, I can go to LOD coloration. And then as I move in and like towards and away from my geometry, I can actually see where the LOD swap is happening. Okay. Finally, we're going to go ahead and use the GPU visualizer for performance. To bring up the GPU visualizer, all you have to do is do Control Shift plus the comma key, and this will actually bring up a bar graph that shows you where you're using all of your GPU resources. And it's a good way to track and kind of see what's going on. And you can click areas and it'll show you. So the ray tracing skylight is using a lot of that there. So I want to go with my final tip, and that's avoiding some common PBR material mistakes. The first mistake that people make is they don't use the reference that's available to them. There's a lot of materials out there. Just go ahead to Google, don't nod PBR materials. We actually reference this in our documentation. So this gives you the luminance setups, the metallic setups. You don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to PBR materials. All the references out there. The second mistake is that people, now the good news here is we're starting to automate this process, so a lot of people don't have to worry about it too much, but you do not want to use the sRGB setting on your normal maps. You want a linear color space. You don't want that gamma corrected. So you want to disable it by double-clicking the texture map and then unchecking sRGB. So I want to thank you all for coming out here today. I'm coming in hot from my friend Matt Geller from Harley-Davidson. If you haven't checked out our online learning portal, please check it out. All of the material that I pulled from this presentation came from our online learning portal. So just be sure to check it out, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.